Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series. Can we save the Oakland A's? And it's been an interesting offseason for the Oakland A's so far. Just want to start off by thanking all of our viewers and all of our commenters for giving me lots of interesting things to think about as we've gone through this offseason. Probably not going to move too far forward in this episode because there's several interesting things to talk about. First, wanted to report that we have made another trade. This trade is actually similar to the ones we did earlier with Bradish and Middleton from the Orioles, where we picked up a veteran, got his team to retain the vast majority of his contract, and we did something similar with the Yankees. The veteran first baseman Christian Walker is on the trade block. Yankees are keeping most of his contract. He is a popular player, so we got a 1 point boost to fan interest for what that is worth. He's also got a captain personality, and I think he can potentially be a useful bat for us against left-handed pitching. Certainly don't envision him being an everyday member of our lineup, but he does give us potentially a little flexibility going forward. No guarantee that he even makes the team, quite honestly, although I think given that he's got that captain personality, he can probably take over for Brian Buelvis for us, who's another right-handed hitter with a captain personality that just has not hit much for us. I think potentially Walker can hit more than Buelvis. Had to give up minor league catcher Nick Schwartz and then Brendan Rodgers, who I think the Yankees may find more useful than we did, as we had him in the minors all of last year. So we didn't give up anyone who's a big part of our future. Clearly, the 36-year-old Walker is not really a big part of our future either. But Jarek Braxton, in the comments to the last episode, mentioned trying to bring on another bat, possibly someone who could help us with the fans. Walker does both of those in a very low-risk way, and if we have to move on from him because he doesn't make the team, not the end of the world, although we'll probably lose the 1 point that we gained in fan interest by bringing him on board. And more interesting to discuss than that minor trade is Hidero Endo, who some of you have questions about, like me, and some of you really love this guy. Bald Sherlock likes him. I think Darkosis slash Nogleg slash Dralix and Marilee Murphy both really love him and are pushing us to do everything under our power to bring Endo on board. And I get why they are encouraging us to do that. There's not a lot of 29-year-old free agents. We've got the benefit of him coming over from Japan as an international free agent, so he's on the open market. He's a middle infielder with a really good glove, and he's got potentially world-class power with an above-average eye. So I get the excitement about Endo, but I've also got some pretty significant concerns about him. His contact is bad. He's going to strike out at an insane rate. The gap power's fine, but he's got no speed whatsoever, so that works against him. And as great as that power is, we're one of the few teams where our ballpark is really going to work against us. Right-handed batters, home runs, .790 ballpark factor. So likely to hit about 20% fewer home runs in Oakland than he would otherwise. Now, granted, it's still going to be a large number of home runs, most likely, with that great power rating. And we do play 81 of our games a year on the road, where he'll potentially be in some parks where he's going to be an absolute monster. So I like a lot of things about this guy, but I really don't like a lot of things about this guy either. And I have been comparing him to Joey Gallo, and I'll try to be objective about these comparisons, despite my distaste for Joey Gallo. But when I look at these guys, I think it's very fair to say that Joey Gallo may be a better offensive player. Their contact is brutal for both of them. They've got the same gap power. A little more home run power from Mr. Endo. Gallo with a much better eye. Gallo is going to strike out less. And running speed, Gallo is actually a bit higher than Mr. Endo. So they're very similar players. But I think I could argue, based on the fact that Gallo's got a better eye, Gallo's going to strike out less. Amazingly, we found someone that Joey Gallo potentially could strike out less than. And Gallo's going to beat out a few more hits with a little more speed. I think you could argue, despite the fact that Endo, all else being equal, will hit more home runs, that Joey Gallo could be a better offensive player than Hidero Endo. And when we look at what Gallo has now done over the course of his career, he's a 193 career hitter, and he struck out about 45% of the time in his career. It's not inconceivable to me that Endo could hit for a lower batting average than Gallo, and it seems very plausible that he could strike out more than Gallo while walking less than Gallo. Now, Gallo with a 107 WRC plus, I think it's perfectly fair to assume that Endo could be over a 100 WRC plus more often than not. And Endo does give us a great glove, or more accurately, a very good glove in the middle infield. So there's definitely things that I like about this guy. He is going to draw walks. He's going to hit home runs at a potentially insane rate. And he's a really good defensive middle infielder. And you think about the history of the game, how many really good defensive middle infielders hit an insane number of home runs while drawing a lot of walks. And I think it's a pretty short list. So from that perspective, Endo is very interesting to me, but I am concerned about some of those faults in his game that I've noted. And Darkosis did kind of suggest a contract for us to think about with Mr. Endo that I think is a real interesting contract despite my concerns about Endo. I don't think it's going to actually resonate with Mr. Endo. Right now he's looking for 5 years, average of $9.6 million. Darkosis recommended trying a front-loaded contract that's severely front-loaded, averaging $7 million over 4 years. I won't put in any of my team options. I'll keep in the bonuses that he's looking for. I'm going to try to make this as straightforward with what Darkosis recommended as I can. I'd be shocked if he accepts this offer, but Darkosis is usually pretty on in the recommendations that they make. I think this is one where they might be being a little ambitious, but I want to give it a try. And I just had to go and pull some money out of our scouting budget to even get enough to make this. But Darkosis suggested $7 million a year over 4 years, very front loaded, or as front loaded as we could make it. And I may need to tweak things because I think this may be too front loaded, but I don't think these numbers are going to work. But if these numbers do work, despite my concerns about Endo, when we get past this year, even despite all the potential limitations I've laid out, this is a very tradable contract and potentially a somewhat valuable contract to teams that perhaps appreciate a Joey Gallo-esque player more than I do. But we'll see what Blanks Endo thinks of this. He says not bad at all, so it wasn't too front-loaded. But he still basically came back and said he wants a little less, $9.46 million a year over 5 years instead of the 9.62 or whatever he was looking at before. And I just realized I may have had my numbers wrong before and not have pulled enough out of the budgets to really check this out. So this is probably our last chance to go back at him for now. So I'm actually going to offer a little more. Average of $7.5 million a year over 4 years, very front loaded. I don't think he's going to go for this, but I want to at least give the recommendation that I've received a fair shake here. So a little bit more. And he is willing to think about this. So this puts me in a tough spot because I don't know that I want to offer him this deal. But it was pretty interesting contract that Darkosis came up with, and I really didn't think that the structure was going to work. I thought it was going to be a little light in terms of the money. Now, granted, I've added in an extra $1 million in each of the last 2 years. I wouldn't think that would be a huge game changer, but it was enough to get there. Now I have to decide whether I really want to offer it to Mr. Endo or not. As I said, I'd really like to have him those next 3 years at $5 million a pop. $15 million this year is going to put us into a interesting decision as far as scouting and development, where we're going to have to probably take a little more out of player development, actually a decent chunk out of player development, put a little more into scouting, and then we are going to need to increase that draft budget also up to over $12 million, given that we're picking, I can't remember whether it was second or third overall, but we're somewhere better than the fourth overall that we were projected. We're picking second overall behind only the Yankees. So our first round pick could be pretty expensive. So I'm going to hold on making that decision since I don't anticipate moving forward until we have talked through the international amateur free agents. But I've really got to kind of put I don't want to say my money where my mouth is, because I don't think my mouth has necessarily been incredibly thrilled with Endo. I'm thrilled about parts of Endo, but I really don't like other parts of Endo. But the contract I almost like more than the player. So who knows? Got a lot to think about. And while I'm thinking about what to do with Mr. Endo, let's take a look at the international amateur free agents, and got a lot of feedback on these guys from viewers, which I do appreciate. We'll start with the pitcher, who I am still really intrigued about. Both the notorious KEV and Jarek Braxton also liked Andres Medina. Jeansy, a little more concerned about him. Hasn't had good luck with side armors, so expressed some caution there. But We're actually, and for those of you who have followed me over the years, you will find this pretty surprising, but we are actually very light in our farm system in terms of high-end pitching prospects. Part of that is because a few of the guys that we drafted 2, 3, 4 years ago haven't necessarily panned out and developed as I hoped they would. But I think we've also had a little more of a balance in IAFA and the drafts with more position players than I typically do. So that makes bringing a pitcher on board potentially attractive to me. And Havoc Medina is very interesting. And with that name, Andres Medina, another callback to our Buffalo Wings days for those of you who were with us in that series, although Andres Medina was a catcher rather than a pitcher back in the day. But love that he's a 16-year-old who's already approaching the mid-90s. I think the ground ball tendencies would play well with the type of team we're trying to build. A potential 4-pitch arsenal. Stuff could be off the charts, and movement and control both well above average. The concern is whether that changeup really develops, given that it's already one of his best pitches. I think there's a good chance that it could, especially given his high work ethic and the great coaching we have in our farm system. I don't love the lack of control and the lack of keeping the ball in the park. There's a lot of room for those to grow. But when I look at Medina relative to the Dominican Rookie League, you can see his control is off the charts for a DSL player, and even his home runs allowed are pretty average for that level. His changeup and his fastball above average for that level. His slider and sinker average. I mean, he's a guy who, even though he's only 16 years old, looks like he can probably step right into the DSL as a 16-year-old. And I do take some comfort that his ability to keep the ball in the park and his control are acceptable and well above average for that level. So he is very intriguing to me, even though he was not necessarily the most popular guy with viewers. He's looking for $3.6 million, which is more than anyone else in this class. But he's definitely someone I'm thinking strongly about. Turning to the batters, I've kind of whittled it down to 2 people. There were more that I talked about in the previous episode. Jorge Aramayo may be a guy to supplement in if we get a bargain on our big gun. But I don't want to make an overbid for Aramayo with somebody else right now just under the fare that Aramayo might accept it, in which case we could potentially miss out on the player that we want more. Some years I'm willing to do that, but the high-end talent this year is so interesting to me that I'm not willing to roll those dice this time around. I've also, in my mind, moved on from Jorge Morales, which is a hard guy to move on from. Above average contact, above average gap power, and world-class home run power and eye. Not good defensively and very slow, but kind of says a lot about what I think about the other players in this draft, that a guy like Morales really is not in the mix for me. So the 2 position players I'm thinking about, in addition to Mr. Medina, are Daniel Campos, who Samuel Overend liked. And I'm really intrigued by Campos. I'm a little surprised that he was not more popular with our worldwide scouting department. That potential 75 contact, 75 home run power combination is quite compelling to me. Also above average gap power, average eye, above average speed, and a more than competent corner outfielder, probably a natural left fielder, has high work ethic, left-handed hitter who I think could be outstanding. But the guy who was the most popular with the viewers is Arturo Estrada, and the list of of people who like him does include Samuel Overend, who also like Campos, as we talked about, but also Jeansy, Joe Random Sports, Bald Sherlock, Jarek Braxton, Not My Four Ply, and the notorious KEV. And I've been meaning to say, just let the notorious KEV know that I'm assuming his nickname is driven by Biggie Smalls. That would make sense to me, the notorious KEV. But I also did want to let the notorious know that when I see his postings and I speak his name, I also think of the old song from the 80s, Notorious by Duran Duran. And that may not be what he was going for, but I just wanted to be upfront that I do think about Duran Duran as well as Biggie when I read comments from the notorious KEV. But John Thomas Arturo Estrada, as I noted, is the pick of the people of our worldwide scouting department, and there is a lot to like about him. The contact is world class. The gap power is borderline exceptional. The speed is exceptional. Not a lot of power, and he's not going to draw a ton of walks, but he's a very good defensive outfielder, slightly better than Mr. Campos with more range, similar error and arm ratings, and an even better personality with the high loyalty, adaptability, work ethic, and intelligence. Incredibly clean prospect, and certainly someone who is very interesting to me. So when I put these guys up against each other, it pulls me towards Campos, because as great as that contact potential is for Estrada, Campos has incredible contact potential as well. The gap power certainly also favors Estrada heavily, and Estrada is never going to strike out. But Daniel Campos has, going back to Mr. Endo type home run power to potentially be a 40-plus homer guy, whereas Estrada is a 5-homer guy if he has a big year. And Campos is going to draw a few more walks. Campos definitely a better bunter. Not that I think either of these players would be bunting a lot. And Estrada certainly superior in terms of his speed. And then, as I noted, fielding ratings are almost identical, but certainly favor Estrada a bit with that excellent outfield range that he has. So I don't think I can really go wrong with either player. Estrada's a bit better defensively. Estrada is certainly far superior in terms of his speed and on the base paths. But I think as far as a hitter, I do like Campos a bit better. That 75 contact, 75 home run power is just a potentially devastating combination together. This is definitely one that I struggle with. I personally lean a bit towards Daniel Campos, but it's close enough in this case that I'm going to let the worldwide scouting department make the determination how to proceed for me, and we are going to make our offer to John Thomas Arturo Estrada. I really like both of these guys. I don't think I can go wrong with either. Estrada is looking for about $600,000 less, and that does mean if things go well, we can possibly go after a Jorge Aramayo to bring another bat into the organization. I also don't hate Juan Bertolucci. I don't love him. It looks like he's kind of a fourth or fifth starter if everything works out well, but he's got some positive personality traits, not looking for crazy money. But if I go with a hitter, we'll go with the scouting department and Mr. Estrada. Now the question is whether we go with Estrada or the pitcher Medina. And Medina has so much going for him that he's a very interesting player to me. I mentioned we could use a huge arm in our organization, and everything about this guy suggests he is going to be dominant. Just a special arm. I also don't love the fact that we've only got an average relationship with Arturo Estrada. But the worldwide scouting department has spoken. We're going to try to be relatively aggressive, get him locked up, and be able to go after somebody else. So we are going to offer Arturo Estrada $3.2 million, so $600,000 more than he's looking for. Would love to lock him up right away. We'll see what happens. And with the decision made on international amateur free agents, that means before we can move this game forward, we're going to need to make a decision on Hidero Endo. And you'll see that he's on a short list for me now. I've already added him to a short list called Scouting Department, where I'm going to track players over time where I've got really strong recommendations from people and have decided to go in a different direction, just so hopefully can have some accountability with our viewers as far as good and bad decisions that I ended up making. And before we make a decision on Endo, did want to check in on something that some of you have mentioned and we haven't checked in yet, as I try to stall and think about things here. But we do have the decision history now in this version of the game. So let's take a look at some of the trades that we've made and how they've worked out positively or negatively. And our best trade was the one where we traded J.D. Davis to the Yankees for Clark Schmidt. We gained 9.4 WAR in that deal. Schmidt's been an important starter for us every time. And you can see he's our best acquisition overall with a 10.1 WAR. So J.D. Davis did not do much with the Yankees. O'Neal Cruz, who we picked up in a trade, was with us for a couple of years, a good one also. Brian Rincon has worked out really well. He's hopefully our second baseman of the future. Anthony Santander and Austin Meadows were both solid free agent acquisitions. Got a couple other pretty solid trades. Brian Buelvis, who's with us now, he was the number 141 prospect in baseball. We traded him, Denzel Clark, Alejandro Manzano, Henry Bolt. Actually, Denzel Clark was the higher rated prospect, not Buelvis. We traded a bunch of guys to pick up O'Neal Cruz, and that worked out well for us. And then in the trade when we picked up Rincon, that worked out well for us as well. Don't want to ignore the worst trade that we made, though, 4.7 WAR loss. Traded away Brady Singer, Nico Horner, Estuary Ruiz, Jace Barofin to the Royals. And this one was just last summer. And we picked up the 17-year-old Alexis Furman and the 21-year-old pitcher Dylan Jordan in return. Lost 4.7 WAR in that deal. But we've got two young players, particularly Furman. Might be able to hit some home runs for us down the line, but certainly not looking good so far. And then a year earlier, we traded Keston Hura, Ray Garrett, Tommy Edman, Gavin Lux, and Eduardo Rivera for Jesus Luzardo. And that one didn't work out too well for us. Luzardo was just a rental for us, went 5-6 with a 4.44 ERA. Didn't feel like we gave up anyone who was really an important part of our organization, basically just some spare parts in the minors. But the scorecard says it was not perhaps our best decision, as Brady Singer, who was involved in the first trade, Gavin Lux, who was involved in the second trade, are the two biggest WAR losers that we've had on our track record at this point. But overall, the numbers in green are generally bigger than the numbers in red as we look at our top 10 decisions as far as acquisitions and losses. So overall, I think our decision making has been decent. And with our stalling for time now complete, it's time to make a decision on Hidero Endo. We've talked about the pros. We've talked about the cons. It's time for me to make a decision. I really like this contract. I think it was a very interesting and good suggestion from Darkosis, and he was right about what Endo might consider accepting. So my hat's off to Darkosis for that. And to Marilee Murphy and Bald Sherlock, who are another couple who have really liked Mr. Endo. But as much as I like this contract, I just don't really like the player. And there's a lot of great things about him. I'm not going to rehash what I like and what I don't like, but to me it comes down to a bit. I really kind of like our infield right now. It's young. We got Soderstrom and potentially the new addition of Walker in a platoon at first. But then other than that, there's 27-year-old Eddys Leonard, 23-year-old Brian Rincon, who just put up a 113 WRC plus, looks like a potentially excellent second baseman. Eddys Leonard is still in the mix. Oslevis Basabe we just traded for, Max Muncy, Tyler Black, and Cameron Cawley, who is our excellent defensive shortstop. Now, granted, he may not be a major league hitter. We've still got to figure that out. But all of these guys that I just mentioned are younger than Endo, and all of these guys that I just mentioned aren't even going to make our 26-man roster. I think there is potential value in that contract if we bring it on board. But I really, given the farm system we're trying to build here, don't want to hamstring ourselves to the extent that we're going to be cutting scouting and development significantly from a year ago to pay for that front-loaded contract. And we're also going to put ourselves in a position with the draft budget where we might not have all of the financial flexibility that we're going to need for the number 2 overall pick. So I am going to just leave Mr. Endo hanging here. I am not going to submit that contract offer to him. It's possible that he'll still linger out there for another several weeks or another month or two and the demand might come down. But as much as I like the contract and as much as I like the positive aspects of the player, I can't get past the negatives. And I can't get past the fact that I do at some level think that Joey Gallo might be a better offensive player than this guy. I just can't do it. So with that, we're going to start moving forward and see what happens with our offer to Mr. Estrada. Also have a minor league contract out there, actually a number of minor league contracts out there as we try to kind of build a little more depth into our organization. And we'll continue to monitor what's going on with Mr. Endo. He still may end up with us, but there's a lot of interesting guys out there. Sanchez, Mullins, and Jimenez are all still on the market. We may end up spending some more money this offseason, but I'm not ready to commit it quite yet. And we only seem to head a day, but a lot going on. Estrada likes our offer. Hidero Endo wants to continue negotiating with us. I'm going to get really aggressive with Mr. Endo and insult him. $25 million over 4 years. Yeah, he's not willing to think about that. Not shockingly, he's still in a good mood. I think he might be getting desperate. But I'm not that desperate yet. And then we've also got a trade with Atlanta that we've been brewing. That's kind of a crazy one. We need more left-handed pitchers. Tim Herron is, in theory, a good left-handed pitcher. Unfortunately, he's out for another 7 months with elbow ligament reconstruction surgery at the age of 31. So no clue what he's going to look like when he gets back, if he gets back. He's been an above-average left-hander over the course of his career. He's not making a ton of money. And he's only had 2 years and 125 days of service. So his arbitration number for the 2029 season is not huge. It's really just kind of a lottery ticket as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, he's not going to be in part of spring training. He probably won't potentially even be able to pitch until after the All-Star break. But we don't have to give up too much thus far to get him up. Armando Alvarez and J.J. Bleday, who have been minor leaguers for us through most of this playthrough. And then we can throw in the minor league reliever Jesse Scholtens as well. And they will keep 75% of his contract this year. So I think we are going to go ahead and I'll see if they'll take a little more money. Nope. I think we're going to go ahead and do that deal. It's going to cost us $340,000 this year, but we're a little light on lefty pitchers. We'll get a free look at him when he goes on a rehab assignment after his injury, and if he looks good after that, we can bring him up, and then we've got the opportunity to potentially bring him back in 2029 if we're still a little light on left-handed arms. For $340,000, I think it's worth doing, so we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. And unfortunately, Mr. Estrada is looking for more money than we've offered him. It says he's looking for $4 million right now. I'm going to at least check in on the two other guys that we really liked. We've got the 5.7 million to spend, so we should be able to get just about anybody we want. Campos is looking for 3.4 million, so that's less than Estrada at this point. And then Andres Medina says he's only looking for 2.8 million. Oh, Andres, you're going to make me pivot here. I still think that number's going to go up. We're going to stick with Estrada. We've got to respect the worldwide scouting department. Oh, now Estrada's playing games with us. Said he wanted 4 million. Now he's saying he wants 4.16 million. Arturo, you may have made a very powerful enemy. We're going to offer Arturo 4.2 million. Hopefully this will get it done. Submit his offer, and we'll see if we can get him signed. If he comes back looking for more money and Campos or Medina are still around and looking for less than Estrada, we may pivot. And Estrada says he likes our offer, but he's sold us that before. And we made it to the start of the preseason. We still have not heard back officially from Mr. Estrada. Says he favors our offer. Sanchez, Mullins, Jimenez, and Endo are all still on the free agent list. And Endo claims he's only looking for $3 million right now. Will he really say that when we engage with him, though? I mean, if we can get him for $3 million for the first year of his contract, that should set him up to be very reasonably priced for us. I don't know if he's actually willing to accept that, but despite all of the horrible things I've said about Endo, if he's willing to sign with us for $3 million, I'd have to be crazy not to, right? I don't think it's going to work when we really engage with him at this number. He actually is willing to think about it. All right. Darkosis, Marilee Murphy, Bald Sherlock, and I'm sure some others who liked him as well, who maybe I have unfortunately not given credit to. You've gotten your way. $3 million, we got to make a run at him. Got an offer out to Blanks Endo. Don't know if I saw that happening. And we've got our contract signed with Arturo Estrada. So it ended up costing us more than we had hoped, $4.2 million. That leaves us with $1.5 million. So we do have enough to potentially compete for another second tier international amateur free agent. But appreciate the thoughts of everybody on what we should do in the IAFA period. I'm really happy to have Estrada on board, but I think I'd be similarly happy if we ended up with Campos or Medina. And we'll certainly follow what those guys do over the course of their careers. And Juan Bertolucci, the decent pitching prospect we mentioned, is still available. We've got $1.5 million to spend. His original number was 1.6. He says he's got an offer of 1.08. As much as I've been fooling around with guys like Endo and Estrada in the offers we made, I think I'm just going to put my best offer right on the table. We've got $1.5 million that we could spend. We're going to offer him every penny that we've got left and see if maybe we can add a starting pitching prospect in with the hopefully center fielder and leadoff hitter of our future in Arturo Estrada. And we've gotten feedback from both Bertolucci and Mr. Endo, and they both say that they like our offers, but will believe it when their signatures are on the bottom of a contract. And I don't know if I thought I would be saying this when this episode got underway, but Hidero Endo is in Oakland A, and we're only spending $3 million next year to bring him on board. So, as I talked about, I have a lot of issues with this guy, but I get the positive things about him, and I think it's going to be really fun to have him as a part of our organization going forward. And the nice thing about Endo is, we've got his rights now if we want them. He will start potentially making some good money in arbitration going forward, but given that we were at one point offering him or thinking about offering him $30 million over 4 years, that was very front loaded, and then we did offer him $25 million over 4 years that was almost as front loaded, or that was almost as front loaded, because the first year was $10 million. The fact that we've got him at these potential numbers, I think, is a win-win. If he ends up being a great player, we've got control of a great player through the end of his 20s and into his mid-30s. And if he ends up being a bust, we haven't made a long-term commitment, and we can get out after any season. And if others value him more than we do, maybe he'll have some value for us on the trade market. And unfortunately, everything did not work out perfectly, as Juan Bertolucci is now looking for more money. Says he wants $2.76 million, so adding another million plus in IAFA dollars probably is not practical to do. So I think I will go looking at the lower end of the market of international amateur free agents, see if there might be someone else interesting that we can add into the mix. But as I noted, pretty excited to have Arturo Estrada on board, and I'm also pretty excited to have Mr. Endo on board. As we talked about, I did not think that was going to happen. Literally just a matter of 15, 20, 30 minutes ago in real time, I thought there was very little chance of that happening. The fact that we got him for $3 million a year and we got tons of flexibility with him is kind of the best of both worlds. So Estrada and Endo both added to the roster in this episode, and we'll figure out if there's another player or two we can add in IAFA going forward. Maybe look for one or two other moves to kind of round out this team, although honestly, with the potential scouting and development and draft budgets we have now with the little money available, I don't know that we're going to have a lot of financial flexibility to do too much. But I do kind of feel with the addition of Endo, the addition of Marte, and even the addition of Walker, we've got, and we picked up Hunter Goodman this offseason as well. We've added in a few guys who might be able to jumpstart our offense a bit. Haven't done a ton with the pitching yet. Still got a lot of holes to fill there. So that may be an area where we look to bargain shop on the free agent market in the coming weeks. Unfortunately, the top guys that are out there are still looking for some pretty serious money in the context of what we can spend. But you never know. Can always get creative. Gregory Soto lingers on the market much longer. He might be a guy we go bargain shopping on, but it's going to have to be a big bargain compared to the $10.2 million he's looking for right now. So as always, appreciate all the thoughts. Appreciate those of you who are still with us. Interesting episode to end up where we ended up, but I'm feeling pretty good about how things worked out. Only 2 free agent signings, a couple of second basemen who probably neither will end up playing second base for us, but think that we've got some better hitters on this team than we did. Historically, these first 4 years, our pitching has been better, and it's not inconceivable to me that that dynamic might be a little different, or at worst, more well-balanced here in this 2028 season when we get there. But still have at least one more episode to figure out what we're going to be working on this off-season and through spring training before the new year gets underway. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.